Welcome. Xebia recently launched the Data AI Monitor. And in this survey, or the results of this survey, we found out that only half of the respondent companies have a clear strategy and plan behind on what they want to do with AI. So I'm really curious about what about the other half? What is their plan and how will they go beyond the hype and also result tangible business value from new technologies like AI? My name is Aila Albecht. I'm together with Steven van Duin, my guest here today at the Xebia studio, and I'm really curious to dive into this topic. Steven, as a start, please introduce yourself.
Sure, thanks, Aila. So I'm Steven. I work at Xebia Data as what we call analytics translator, and that means that I help companies, mainly leaders, to identify if and how and where AI or analytics in general can potentially help them. And that is helping solve business problems or unlocking business opportunities. So really focusing on potentially valuable use cases where AI or analytics in general can play a role.
Amazing.
And besides that, I also facilitate a whole bunch of trainings around a data-driven way of working and embedding that within the organization, building up those capabilities across all your teams.
Great, thank you. Looking forward to the conversation. You mentioned that there are challenges for some of the companies, and the main challenges also, as you mentioned, is to really identify what is tangible business value that we can get out of new technologies. Could you please elaborate a little bit on these problems and challenges?
Yeah, sure. I would say my typical project starts with a leader telling me, I want AI. And then my typical reply is, okay, what problem are we going to solve for you?
Yeah.
And I would say, I think in that request, I want AI, I think there are the three main questions at hand. One is, where and how can we apply AI and going beyond the hype of needing to have AI in your strategy somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
The second one is how to realize use cases or execute AI use cases, whether it is building an in-house algorithm or applying an LLM. It doesn't really matter. There's a structured approach to do that, or at least we have a structured approach to do that, to make sure that you focus on value, that you also have an experimental mindset, kill your darlings if needed, but have a deliberate go, no-go or pivot decision every time or after every phase. And the third one is people telling me I want AI also signals to me, I don't really know what my role is here. You give it to me. Whereas there's a crucial role for leaders to play in the entire process and the entire change management around it.
That's very interesting that you mentioned that. Thank you. You mentioned that as a starting point for your conversation. Business leaders or leaders in general just state we need AI. I think there's also some kind of momentum of FOMO around AI, like, oh, we need to do something with it. And there's also a tendency of some hyper action to just buy a bunch of licenses for some of the LLMs or some of the models and then just throw them at the team without having a real strategy in mind. But I would suggest that it all comes down to value. I really like that aspect that you put out there about concrete use cases. So how can leaders really identify whether this AI thing is worth pursuing?
Yeah, so I would say from our analytics translation practice, I always say there are two cornerstone frameworks that we have that can help them to answer those questions. One is around how to identify valuable use cases, which is what we call the value chain of data science. The other one is the AI solution framework, which is about executing those frameworks.
Okay.
Well, your question around how to identify valuable use cases really fits with that value chain of data science, where whenever you build an algorithm or you embed whatever AI system, let's call it fuzzy as it is in that way, within your organization, when building it, you of course you need data, and from there you continue. But when identifying what potential use cases there are that are valuable and serve a business need, I like to reason back from that value chain, actually starting at the value, so that's older at the right side, and from there reason back, okay, what actions need to be taken by whom to unlock that value. And then from those actions and action takers, and it can be a person, can be an automated system,
Oh yeah.
reason back, okay, what insights are needed to take those actions? And from those insights, reason back what data is needed to make that happen. And if you reason back from the business value towards the data, you, well, inherently and immediately identify your key end user or system, their needs to make it happen. It's valuable in its essence because that's what you started with.
Yeah.
And it helps you to or immediately also scope down the data sources that you will need.
Okay.
Because when realizing such solutions, a lot of time, effort, and money is used for unlocking
Absolutely.
that data and making it useful and available. So, really reasoning back from value to action, to insights, to data, instead of looking at your data, just seeing whatever you can do with it. It's fine for an innovation project, but not for, I would say, building valuable use cases.
I love it.
That's the approach and the starting point for us.
Okay, amazing. Where is leadership needed in that process? Because you're talking from a consultancy perspective, obviously. You were talking about people or persons or even like technical systems taking over. What is the role of leadership in this?
Well, at this stage, I would say the role of leadership is to help us identify what are the key business challenges that we should focus on. And it can be on different levels in the organization, right? It can be on organization level, where it's the bigger questions, and then probably a bit more fuzzy, but where and how can AI potentially help us to realize X, Y, Z, whatever your strategy is.
Got it.
But it can also be on team level or on department level. Given our objectives, given our goals as a team, how or where can we potentially enhance those using AI? And we'll discuss the solution framework in a bit. At least would be my suggestion. And there I can also pinpoint out where leaders can play what role. But I would say, well, in identifying those use cases, a big role for them to play, and then handing over almost to a more analytics team, but still staying involved to keep touch or keep track of whether it solves their need, their question, and more
great.
later.
Thank you. Great. For me personally, the word framework ignites an expectation of something tangible, something that I can cling to in times of uncertainty or where I'm exploring new ways of working. So I really appreciate the fact that you mentioned Xebia has a framework in place for AI adoption. Could you elaborate on that? Where is where does it help?
Yeah, sure. So the AI solution framework that I mentioned is it's a framework, you could say development framework to realize AI solutions. But if you buy them off the shelf, the framework still holds. It's just less development time.
Okay.
The framework consists of 3 phases. The ideation phase is the first one. Second one is experimentation phase. And the third one is industrialization phase. And in that ideation phase, that's what I actually just talked about. It's identifying the problem to be solved, building a business case around it, making a deliberate go, no-go decision to pursue one of those ideas or potential use cases, and really refining it. So I would say build the battle plan for the team, what they need to build an experimentation phase. So really set the team up for success so everyone knows what you're striving towards to, and everyone has the same goalpost in mind as an end goal. Yeah. So that's the ideation phase, and the goal is to end with a validated use case. So typically you would have a technical validation, so an initial, maybe small data dump to see whether there's any music in the data, I would say. Operational validation, so do we have the stakeholders identified, and are those people also able and willing to help us out and realize that's building a solution or embedding that solution. And third one is the financial feasibility. So do we still paper-based exercise, but does the business case make sense? Yeah, got it. So that's the ideation part. Then, and as you can imagine, there's a big role for leaders to play, right? Absolutely. No, I got it. In the heavy lifting. Well, I think they will outsource the heavy lifting to me, but there's still a big role for them to play. In the experimentation phase, that's where if you build the model yourself, you'll do the data collection, data exploration, model building, model testing, all that stuff. If you buy an off-the-shelf model, you still need to apply it to your own data. So you still need to make some data available. You still need to do some validation and testing, all that stuff. So the experimentation phase, we like to split in 2 different steps. And then it almost sounds like a waterfall approach. It's not. It's really, really cyclical in its nature. But in the experimentation phase, the first step is to technically prove that we can build something that works.
Okay.
So for me, there are 2 hypotheses for every project. One is, does it technically work? And the second one is, does it work in practice?
Yeah.
The first one we test with the proof of concept. So can we collect the data? Can we? Is there enough signal in the data to do any prediction? And if yes, so we have an intermediate results workshop or a go-no-go session where I would like the leader to understand what we built or what the team built and to take the decision, do we think we should further pursue it? Then we're going to move it into the real world. So from a, say, Jupyter Notebook or VS Code into something that end users can work with, pilot users can work with, and do a pilot to see whether they can actually take that action that we mentioned earlier. So in the proof of concept, we worked up to the insights.
Got it.
We got those insights, but that's only halfway.
Yeah.
So we need to test in practice whether the end users or the automated system can take the action that we envisioned, and whether we track and whether we measure that value. So whether we can also realize it.
I was just about to ask that. This is where the value discussion comes in.
Yeah, definitely. So the business case we build in the ideation phase.
Yeah.
We validate that in the experimentation phase, in the MVP and in the pilot. If we have, after the experimentation phase, and we still didn't kill our darling, implying that we have something that works technically, quick and dirty, but users can interact with it, and it is valuable in itself, on a small scale, but still valuable, then we can proceed to the industrialization phase, so the third one, where we're going to turn this MVP darling into a proper IT product.
Got it.
So from the dev, go to production, if we didn't already have to do that, but let's not dwell into too many details here. Think of all the code quality checks, all the functionality checks, everything that Xebia excels in. That's all what happens in the industrialization phase, to actually have the solution to be able to go live for a wider group of users. And then the last challenge or the last activity is to actually scale it out to all applicable end users.
Got it.
And also really focus on their change journey. So for the pilot users, we already started the change journey, hopefully involving them in the ideation phase already, but early on. And I like to refer to the EDGAR process from ProSci that I really like as a thinking methodology. They are already at the ability level in the industrialization phase and looking at reinforcement already. But all the other people still need to be made aware, need to be made knowledgeable.
Absolutely.
Well, hopefully we created some desire in the pilot already.
Yeah.
They need the ability to be built. So that's all part of the industrialization phase on a wide scale.
Amazing.
And again, where leaders can play a big role, right? I can tell people to change, but who's going to listen to me?
Exactly. And it's not like sometimes when it comes to leadership and change management, I see that with a lot of clients, it comes down to concrete behavior.
Yeah.
Not only like giving container concepts like, oh yeah, we need more curiosity about this technology, but it comes to really changing concrete behavior on the work floor.
Yeah, definitely. And I think thinking of the projects that I did and the role of leaders, biggest roles for them to play are in the ideation phase to bring that problem and also show their investments into the problem, and not only by financial resources or by their team members, but also their be present during the ideation session to elaborate on the problem we're going to solve together.
Personal commitment?
Maybe even personal commitment. Yeah. And throughout the project, definitely personal commitment. With every go, no go moment, they need to take the decision to go, no go, or proceed. It's their money we're playing around with, right?
Absolutely. That's interesting because you also mentioned, I mean, and you had me at that one when you were describing the process, that it sounds like a little bit of a waterfall process that we are following, but you mentioned the incremental nature of it.
Yeah.
So there are definitely points where we can deliberately take a go or no go decision, or even go back and reiterate? Is that also within the model?
Yeah, definitely. And experimentation phase can easily last 6 to 18 weeks or so. Just ballpark figuring here. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to show any results after only 6 weeks or 18 weeks or whatever. Mm-hmm. For example, every sprint has sprint goals, sprint objectives that we're going to meet or not meet. And every, I would say, sprint, we're also going to dictate, should we proceed or not? So I would say every sprint has a go, no go moment.
Got it.
That maybe if your sponsor is really high up in an organization, maybe doesn't need to take all those, so say, micro decisions. Mm-hmm. But definitely you want to take this person along throughout.
Yeah.
And when I think of methodologies and ways of working, I like to borrow some ideation, in the ideation phase, some design thinking type of concepts and methodologies. For the experimentation phase, I have the lean startup way of working in my backpack. Mm-hmm. So sorry, I don't do QBRs that well in the experimentation phase. I don't know what's coming and what the data tells us. Yeah. That's for the industrialization phase. So then we have a better view of where we stand, where we need to be from an IT perspective or from a product perspective, as well as from a change management perspective. So that means that we can also adopt an agile way of working in the industrialization phase. So you can say it's all over the place or structured given the objectives of every phase. And I would like to go for the latter.
Absolutely. And I mean, remember, we're still talking about the overall framework or solution framework. And that's, for me, that's the guardrail I would clinch to, knowing that this is part of a bigger plan. Yeah. Thank you for elaborating.
Yeah, sure. Welcome.
So, Steven, I really appreciate your elaboration on the concept and on the framework. Sure. Going back to the start of our conversation, we know that 50% of the companies are actively pursuing and investing in the field of AI and have a plan behind that. For the other 50%, if I listen to you, I would say it is a great opportunity to reach out to us, potentially do an ideation workshop in the first end to see where this could take them.
Oh, definitely. And that could be a one-day workshop where at the end of the day, we have some first use cases refined to a certain extent, of course, that you could start building the next day. So that's what we focus those workshops on. So that's a really great starting point.
Amazing. Thank you. So, as my guest Steven mentioned in our great conversation, if you're looking for some guardrails, some first ideas, or just want to explore new opportunities with innovation, please reach out to us and we could start your ideation workshop on a very short notice. Thank you.